Bad, not bad. We've got two components out of the way. And now let's tackle the big one, the cart item. And let's do it slowly, step by step, just so we are still on the same page. And as far as the imports, we've got React, we have styled components, we have format price, since of course I would want to format the price. Now I'll also use the amount buttons. So something that we used in the add to cart component. And we'll have to do a little bit of logic over here as well, since it is looking for three values. And then we have a trash icon, which is just going to be in a button, and then use cart context, because what I would want to do is grab two functions out of the context. In the cart item, I would want to use the function of remove item. So I'll be able to remove the item as well as the toggle amount. So check it out in a complete project. Notice we have this option of removing the item. Now, again, there's no functionality, but I might as well add those functions onto the item since I wouldn't want to hop back and forth. And also we have this option of changing the amount. Now, this is going to be the case where, of course, we'll have to pass in those functions to amount buttons, because keep in mind, if you remember, when we were setting up amount button, we're looking for three functions: increase, decrease, and the amount. So when we were setting up add to cart, of course, we set up those functions in that component. And we'll have to do something similar here as well. So now let me navigate back to the cart item, and I'll just start by grabbing my two functions out of the cart context. So const, and then let's say remove item, and then toggle amount. So those were the two functions that we used over there. And that will be equal to my use cart context. And then let's set up two placeholder functions, which at the moment won't do much, but we're going to go with const and increase like so. Now we're not looking for any parameters here. It's just going to be a nice little arrow function. And as far as the functionality, like I said, nothing in there. And then the same will be for the decrease. We're just setting this up because I would want to pass them into the amount buttons. And then eventually, of course, we'll set up the logic here as well. And once I have both of these functions, I would want to work on my return. So I'll say that I would want to return a wrapper. And inside of the wrapper, let's set up a div with a class name of title. And then there's going to be a price, amount, and all of that. Now, the reason why we're setting up this way, because if you take a look at the CSS, there's going to be a grid layout. So that's important. Don't place everything within a title. There's only going to be certain things in a title, and then the rest of them will be separate columns. Now, there's also one gotcha where we'll display price technically in two places, and I'll cover that more once we get there. So as far as the title, well, now, since I know that I passed in everything that was coming from the item, from my cart item, into my component as a prop, of course, I would just need to destructure it, correct? And we're looking for ID. We're looking for the image, name, color, and price, as well as the amount, like so. So then let's scroll down. And as far as the return, I'm going to start with an image, where in the source, I'll have my image, and then for alternative, I'm just going to have my name, like so. So let's say we should have something on a screen since we have already two items in the cart. And there it is. Now keep in mind, this is a small screen look. And that is very, very important. You'll see the differences. And then right next to this div, image, I guess, I'm going to place my div with a heading 5 of class name of name. And inside of it, I would just want to display my name. And then I also would want to display the current color. Because remember, I know I said this before, but for every item, we have multiple colors, and we'll treat them as separate items in the cart. That's why we go with a paragraph with the class of color. And we just type color and then color. And then let's add a span. And in here, since I would want to add that color, wherever it is, again, I'll use that inline setup, where we go with style and we just say background and we set it equal to color. Something we have done already for the buttons and some other components as well. So let's save it. Let's see how it's going to look. We'll see. Now, of course, we have our color. And after the paragraph, I'm going to set up my heading 5 with a class name of price small. So class name price small. So since there's two layouts, we have small screen layout and then the big screen layout. Essentially, I will hide this one using the CSS. So there's going to be two places where we render the price. So in here, I'm going to go with format price and I will pass in the actual price. Because remember, we're getting that from the props like so. But then once you go to the bigger screen, notice how essentially we'll hide that because eventually we'll display it over here. That's why don't freak out. We have two places where we render the price. So this one is going to be for the small screen and we hide that once we get to the big screen. So we have our div. That was our title. That's our essentially our first column. And now I want to set up the price. So again, this is going to be shown only once we get to the big screen. So we go with heading 5, class name, and we go with price. And of course, again, we need to format the price. So we display nicely our price like so. Let's save that one. And then remember the amount buttons, the component that we used in the cart component. Now, of course, I would want to set it up here as well. So we go with amount buttons and it was looking for 3 values as far as the props. We needed to pass in the amount, which is going to be equal to the amount that is coming as a prop. Then we have increase and decrease functions. And for time being, we're passing in these placeholders. So not toggle amount. We will invoke it here in the increase. We just pass in our placeholders. So we say increase is equal to increase, and then decrease is equal to a decrease. And I'll close my amount component. And there it is. And of course, there is no amount component because it is amount buttons. My apologies. And now we want to display subtotal as well as the remove cart button. So right after the amount buttons, since again, we have a column layout, I'm going to go with heading 5 of class name of subtotal. And then we'll format the price. But in this case, I would want to multiply the price by the amount. So how many items I have multiplied by the price. So again, format price, we pass in price times and the amount. So we save. Awesome. Again, we're not going to display that on a small screen. Only once we get to the big screen, then we can see our subtotal. That is done on purpose because we don't have much real estate over here. And then lastly, the remove button. So we go with our button type is not going to be submit. It's actually going to be a button. Then we're going to go with the class name, a little bit of styling, and let's set up a remove and -btn. And then once we click, I would want to invoke my remove item. And if you remember in the cart context, we were looking for the ID. Again, there's no functionality, but we might as well set everything up since it just makes a bit more sense. So on click, and then we need to pass in, of course, the arrow function. And let's just call it remove item and then pass in the ID that we're getting from the prop. I do have the class, I have the type, and the last thing that I just need to add is the icon. So I go with the icon that I imported from React Icons, and we should be in good shape. There it is. Now, of course, we have our icon. Again, we have multiple layouts. We have one for small screen and one for big screen. So this is going to be the big screen layout. And then once we get to the small screen, this is going to be our second layout. So we're pretty much done with our UI as far as how the cart page is going to look like. So now, of course, we just need to start adding functionality because at the moment I can click all day long and nothing is happening, correct? As well as displaying, well, what are our totals.